name is Kristen Hassen, and I'm going to tell you just a little bit about me and why the heck am I doing this, and what do I have the credibility to do this for? And the short answer is I don't, but there are not very many people that do, because AI is such a completely different world than what we have ever entered. So I have been nerding out on AI for the better part of a year. But I have taught myself, and I've learned from some smart people here in Austin, Texas, where I live. My company is called Outcomes Consulting. I work closely with Shelter Animals Count and several other national organizations as we try to usher in the future of animal welfare, and AI is really going to be a critical piece of that. So today we're going to walk through some AI basics, but then we're going to practice. So for those of you that are interested in getting some help today, we are going to go through some real life examples. So get those ready for the second half of the webinar. The first thing that I want to make sure to share is that AI is really weird. It's not like anything else we've ever had. It's sort of like the early days of the internet, when we were all trying to figure out, what is this thing and what does it do? And AI is like that, but even more complex and nuanced in some ways. And it really is going to change the way we do almost everything, particularly with work. And it has some really interesting implications for animal welfare itself, which we hope to talk about in a future webinar. We're not going to get into that too much today, but I'll just go back to the fact that AI is strange. And you'll see some weird pictures of me as a child. I was one of those like creative nerd kids that love to imagine and love to dream up like a different world. And back then, we did that through books and nature and things like that. But AI is actually really, really awesome for people that do want to think about the world differently, that are creative minds, that do have questions that they're like, well, what if it could be this way? So if you are one of those people and you think AI is not for you, you're wrong. It's actually, AI is really great for people that have expertise in a field and are creative, out of the box thinkers, or want to be. So this is going to be relevant to you. Okay, I'm going to start with two quotes. I've given this presentation a couple of times, and I haven't started with these, but I want to do it today because I think there's two kind of competing ideas around artificial intelligence right now. One is best represented by Ethan Mollick, who he wrote a book called Co-Intelligence, which is great. It's on Audible, and I have learned so much from him. He's actually how I got my start in really diving into AI. There's a great podcast, and I'm going to give you a whole reference list for all of this. There's a great podcast that he kind of explains why we should be using AI for work. It's a very compelling argument, but he has written books. He is at the Wharton School for Business, and really, he is just so helpful when it comes to like normal people using AI. But one of his quotes that I love is always invite AI to the table. And we're going to talk about what that means. And then there's this competing sort of line of thought. And in many ways, these two people probably agree on both of these things. But the second quote is, everything you talk about with ChatGPT or other LLMs is being recorded in one central location where the company can read everything you say to the machine. AI will be able to know you on a level perhaps more intimate than you even know yourself. And that's Eric Voorhees, creator of Venice.ai, which we'll talk about a little bit more. But there are real concerns about privacy, about censorship, about what is happening with all that stuff you're putting into ChatGPT. Is it really using it as training data? Is it taking that information and it will be forever tied to you? And there's a lot of unknowns about that. And so I want to just caveat all of this to say that right now, using AI for personal use, like asking it a personal relationship question, or telling it a detail of your life you wouldn't want other people to know, that's something you want to be really careful about, especially as we're still learning what that data is being used for. So we're going to start just very quickly breezing through some common terms. And these are some of the terms you hear about in AI. So I'm not going to talk through each of these, but a couple do stand out as getting used a lot. One is large language models. So these are the most advanced AI systems. They're the ones like ChatGPT, Gemini, and these are trained on trillions of records of data. They're basically compiling and amassing all the knowledge in the world and putting it into these large language models. And so those models are what we use. And one of the first rules of LLM, or one of the first rules of AI, is that you want to be using one of those large language models. They are the most sophisticated and they have the most data. The other one I want to just mention here are prompts. Prompts are the ways we talk to AI. Those are the commands we give it, the questions we give it. And so these help guide AI. And if you prompt differently, you'll get different answers. So that is a really important point that I'll show you what I mean when I say that. But when you prompt AI, the more specific you are, the better answer you're going to get. So AI is not great for saying something like, write me an SOP on dog kennel cleaning. It does it, it's fine, but if I give it more specific information about what I need, it gives me a much better response. So we'll talk a little bit about that. Just a couple more terms that you're going to hear me use. One is chain of thought, and that's when you provide step-by-step instructions to AI. Chain of thought is those more sophisticated, more nuanced prompts that give AI step-by-step instructions on how to do something. Hallucination is another term we'll talk a lot about, but I've had a lot of issues with this. I use AI every single day for in some cases, academic work, writing research papers, and it does hallucinate. And that's when it provides information to you that is plain wrong, not based on real information. And because AI is always going to give you an answer, we're going to talk a little bit about that in a moment. GPTs, that stands for generative pre-trained transformers. And these are the customized large language models. So GPTs are the ones that we just talked about, and these are owned by companies that run them, that are amassing all this data and training the AI on it. And so then we have tokens. So AI doesn't talk in language like we do. It focuses on the individual relationships between words and pieces of words, and the components of sentences. And part of why we have some of the disconnect between artificial intelligence and English is because AI thinks in tokens. And you can see on the left, this is a good example of one thing that tends to happen with AI is that this is getting better, but when it needs to do a visual with words on it, you'll often get these nonsensical words. And that is partly just because when it is thinking in tokens, that is not translating to language. And this graphic generated by AI is another thing you really want to know, which is that AI is not good at explaining itself to you. That's because it hasn't trained on that much data about itself. And so if you want to learn about AI, it's actually probably better at this point to either use Google search engine or another search engine or an AI powered search engine like Perplexity. And we'll talk about that specifically in a moment. So this next section, I'm giving you the guidelines that were really helpful to me. And these are far from comprehensive. There's so much reading, learning, watching to do, and I recommend everybody does that. But for what we're doing today, I wanted to just get you some things that were helpful for me when I was getting started. So these are just a few tips that I'm going to share. And this whole presentation was generated by AI and is using AI. So this presentation was created with beautiful.ai. There are so many awesome platform or software solutions now to build AI generated PowerPoint type presentations that are so much better looking. So you can scrap the old way of doing it and start using one of these, and they are really awesome. So there are 3 LLMs right now that are the big ones. They're like the Corvettes of the LLMs. Those are ChatGPT 4, Claude 3.5, and Google Gemini 1.5. So those are the 3 big ones that you'll hear about. We're primarily going to use ChatGPT 4 today because that's the one that I use the most, and I find to be overall the most useful for animal welfare for a few reasons. Venice AI, I just wanted to mention because it's something that just came on my radar, actually, listening to the latest on AI. But Venice AI aims to solve a couple of the problems of the other LLMs. It does not collect your personal data. and it does not censor you. And so it's more private and more secure. This is going to become an issue that is increasingly concerning, that AI may be collecting information from us. We don't want it to. Venice.ai is a solution for that. And there's a great, in the link we're going to give you, there's a great podcast about this, talking to the founders, the two founders and the CEO of Venice.ai, talking about why they did it and why it's important. I'm going to read you just a little quote that they said that I thought was compelling. And I have quotes all over my board over here, but they said, AI involves seriously powerful intelligent systems. Tech needs to be democratized. We don't want to live in a world where one or several large companies are providing AI for 90% of the planet. Venice.ai is like ChatGPT that doesn't spy on you and doesn't censor you. So it's a decentralized version that is not doing the same things the others are doing. So something to consider. I haven't messed around with it a lot. It's about 2 months behind the others right now, but that's not a lot. For most people, it's not a big deal. So I'll be checking out Venice.ai, but I'm just getting started on that. Stephanie, are people able to chat now? I just want to make sure we're good with that.
So we're still testing it. It looks like they can ask questions.
Okay.
And I can field those and I can chime in, but it doesn't look like they can share them with the group.
Okay, sorry about that, everybody. Zoom has had some changes recently to settings, so some of these issues are popping up regularly, but if you can just put your chat comments in the Q&A, we can treat them just like chat. Sorry about that, and we'll keep trying to figure it out.
Yep, and we can send any links out after to everybody as well.
Great. So with tip number 2 is to think about AI not as a search engine, but as a creative partner or your assistant. And we literally mean your assistant. Treating AI like an assistant, what it allows you to do is give it work to do, but also always check that work. And you have to build a relationship with AI, with each LLM over time. Ethan Mollick says this thing that has been very true for me, which is that it takes at least 10 hours or 3 sleepless nights to learn an LLM, because once you start diving into what they can do, and they all work a little bit differently and have different strengths, it does take some time to begin to understand that it can profoundly change everything that you do. And so I generated this issue that was me in the middle of the night, and how I was feeling, because I was like, what? No way. And it can be frustrating. It's fascinating. But it is something that you have to invest time into. It's almost like learning a new craft. So you will not learn AI just from like going to ChatGPT and entering a few things. And I didn't say this earlier, but each of these LLMs is about $20 a month to subscribe to. I'm subscribed to more than I want to even think about right now as I learn. It really, if you're not using the paid version of these, you're probably missing out. One cool thing ChatGPT 4 just did is they made ChatGPT 4 free and available to everyone, but it is more limited how much you can use it if you're not paying for it. And for most of the others, you're going to want to do that subscription. Right now, $20 a month is the cost for almost all of them. I'm sure we'll start to see that change, but right now it's not very expensive to use them, and the paid versions are typically worth it. And I am not a salesperson for these platforms, but I have done both, and unpaid is oftentimes just lacking the capacity. So you need to know enough about what you're asking it to know when it's wrong. This is why if I wanted to learn, let's say I wanted to learn about the planets, and I was particularly interested in Pluto, I would right now, I would be more likely to go to a Google search engine or Perplexity, which is an AI powered search engine, than I would to ask that question to ChatGPT. And that's because of the issue of hallucinations. And it's because it doesn't always get it right. Sometimes it will get it wrong. So like, whereas the internet will tell you if it doesn't have the answer, you won't get any search results. With AI, it's always going to give you an answer. It wants to get it right. It wants to give you something. That answer could be totally wrong. And so particularly for data analysis, which we're going to talk about more today, when you're analyzing data, you want to make sure that that you are checking your work. Here's a great example. So I'm an animal shelter consultant. I work with data sets all the time. And this is one of my clients. And I saw this data. This is their number of animal control cases. And I saw that the AI did this for me. So ChatGPT did this based on data that I entered. And what I saw was like, okay, so you have this 2021, you have 28,000 animal control cases. And in 2022, it spikes up to 31,000. So 28 to 31, it seems like a big change. That is a good example of a red flag that I'm going to want to check my work. In this case, that was correct. That data was not wrong. But I have had so many other data sets where I'll enter it and it just misses one thing, or animal shelter data is notoriously messy. If your data set is messy, you're gonna get out something that's equally as messy. So if you haven't cleaned up your data, you're going to struggle to get accurate results. So you always want to check, particularly when it comes to data. I embarrassingly had a whole data set that looked totally nuts. And I sent it to a couple of friends and was like, look at this data, this is crazy. And it was completely wrong. So it can fool you. You want to always review your work and you want to look for mistakes and hallucinations. I would say that with animal shelter work, they pop up about 50% of the time. So AI is that assistant, but that assistant also makes mistakes. I said this before, but AI is not the same as the web or Google search and shouldn't use it like that. So going back to what I was saying about Pluto and what I'm saying about animal welfare, I know a lot about animal welfare. So I actually am better suited to use AI for animal welfare because I know what I'm talking about and I can usually spot problems if they're wrong. If you tell me something incorrect about Pluto, the planet, or any of the planets, I wish I knew more, but I probably wouldn't know it was wrong. So it's actually better to start in a field that you really understand rather than a field you don't know anything about. So as I shared, when you're looking for the internet, you may just not get a search result, but when you're using AI, you will get a result, it just may be wrong. And here's a good example. This is actually from 2 days ago. I'm writing an academic paper on responses to animal cruelty and neglect. And I had asked Claude 3.5 to give me some references. It's really, the LLMs are awesome for giving references. But as I'm looking at this reference list, I saw this one by Jenny Lederer, No Shelter Here, the Cost of Criminal Justice Approach to Animal Cruelty, Criminal Justice Policy Review 2021. I think that's a hallucination. If I'm wrong, tell me. I've been searching for it, and I actually had a couple of my colleagues search too, and they couldn't find it anywhere. But it may be a hallucination, and that would be a good example of the kind of thing that pops up a lot, that looks real but isn't. So in Claude 3.5 does a good job. It says, note, you should verify these sources. I don't have access to current academic databases. So it's telling us to check, but we should. I'm hoping that article is real and I just haven't found it yet because I really want to read it. So tip number 5 is that you want to give AI a role and tell it who to be, because who you tell it to be is going to give you very different responses. If I tell AI to be if I tell it to be an academic professor of animal law for this paper I'm writing, it's going to give me a very different response to a question than if I say, could you be a social worker working with people who commit animal cruelty and neglect? You'll get different responses from those 2 prompts. So giving it a role and telling it who to be for each question. And sometimes you want to prompt it to be several different people because you'll get different responses that can be really generative. Here I told it to be my forever favorite human, Michael Scott, of The Office, one of the best shows in the world. And I asked him I said, please be Michael Scott from The Office and help me figure out how to solve some of the problems in my animal shelter. And I got a very long list, but I liked this one. Michael Scott says, all right, listen up. We got to get these animals moving. Like Pam when she was running away from Roy. Set up a speed dating for pets event. Quick, fun, and effective. People come in, meet the pets, and boom, adoptions galore. Let's get some catchy, fun profiles for each animal. No one can resist a dog with a story like, this is Fido. He loves Dwight's beet farm and will protect you from any shrews. it will give you an answer. You can tell it to be people, but you can also just tell it to be roles. So for animal welfare, for instance, I work a lot with government shelters. So I'll say, please be a government contracts expert. And that's really helpful when you need that kind of information. You'll recall I mentioned the chain of thought prompts, and these are really important. So if you give, one of the mistakes I made early on that everybody does is it'll sort of use it like a search engine. And this happened to a colleague of mine not long ago. She was writing a commencement speech she was supposed to give, and she said, write me a commencement speech. Well, she sort of said like about this, and I need it to be 5 minutes long. And I wrote a commencement speech, but it was terrible. And what she missed on a couple of things, she missed out on a couple of things. One, she didn't tell it who to be. So what she should have done is uploaded some of her own writing or previous speaking. She should have fed that to ChatGPT and said, write in my voice. And then the other thing that she should have done is a chain of thought. So she should have given it a step-by-step versus asking it this big job. So maybe she would say, I'm going to give a commencement speech. Here is my voice. The audience is X, and can you please write an outline for a 5-minute commencement speech? And then step 2, that looks great. Can we write an introductory paragraph with this and this built into it? So, oh, it looks like people can chat now. So that is a better way to get a better response. You will not ever get what you want from one prompt. You'll get something, but it won't be exactly what you want. And so when you're thinking about AI like an assistant or a partner, you're partnering with it to get the responses you want. Oh, why the heck is there a peanut butter and jelly sandwich here? I don't know. It doesn't seem like everyone did this, but I had to go to this like speech class where we had to tell people how to make a peanut butter and jelly sandwich step by step. And it was such a pain in the butt. And if we messed it up, like everybody, I don't know, started doing wild things like with the bread, and so we weren't being specific enough. And it's kind of like that. You really want to be like very specific about what you're asking. Hey, everybody. Oh, hey, Kathy. Oh my gosh, I miss you. Hi. Are you going to be at Best Friends? Okay. Next, you want to give it reference material. So if you're asking it to do something, you will need to give it reference material to make it helpful. Reference material can be anything. It can be spreadsheets. It can be images. It can be writing. It can be something that you agree with and think is great. And you're like, I like this position statement, or I love this SOP. I like how it's written. Can you please write me an SOP about X written in this style and format? That's a really good tip. That saves a lot of time. So you'll upload really anything that you've written. You can even upload emails, articles, even I think now you can upload videos of yourself, but you want it to learn your voice. And importantly, if you are uploading something that could be sensitive, you should de-identify that data. So right here is a data set. We're going to look at this again when we go into ChatGPT, but this was a data set that I was working on for a client. And what you can see is that I de-identified it prior to putting it. Oh, hey, Chris. I de-identified it prior to putting it into ChatGPT because what I didn't want was for ChatGPT to have that information tied to a particular shelter. I just wanted it to analyze the data. So that is really helpful. It's a very, very helpful function of it, but de-identifying it until we know more, especially, is a good idea. This one has taken me the longest. I think this has been the hardest thing for me to learn because I'm so busy and I work so quickly that I tend to try to do things myself when I should use AI. And so AI can save you half your time, probably half of what you're doing you can do using AI, and just increase your capacity vastly. If you read the Harry Potter books, there's this one where Hermione, like she has this, I don't know, special like clock or watch where she can be 2 of her at once. Did anybody? Yeah, the time turner. It feels a lot like the time turner. You just increase your ability to do work by so much, but you have to start thinking about AI as like the first thing you go to when you're doing work. So think about how could AI help me with this? This example, so this is from one of the shelters that I used to run, and we had a thing where we would take an image like this, and we're actually going to do this in a minute. And we would have, if somebody was surrendering a pet, we would have them write out a profile in the lobby and tell us a little bit about their pet. And so you can take something like this, you can put it into AI, you can put it into ChatGPT, and you can say, write me a bio for this pet based off of this information, which is so cool. So two things in that. It can take your handwriting and very, very messy handwriting, and it can turn it into text, which is great if you're a person that likes to whiteboard out or draw out like even diagrams. It can help you with all of that. And it also can take something that is one work product and turn it into something else, which is really helpful as well. So use it first, try using it for everything for a week. Like give yourself a week and say, I'm going to try to use AI for everything, and see how far you get. You're going to get a lot farther that way than if you kind of just, yeah, maybe I'll try it for this. So that is the best way to learn. And it has taken me a long time. And in fact, every day I wake up thinking, oh, why did I do that? I should have just used AI. You'll always want to check your work for hallucinations. I had a very like mundane example of this. I had AI help me write a press release, and I wrote it. It did a great job. I was like, this is so good. I'm just going to submit it. It was so good, based on what I had given it. I submitted it, and I'm a really careful editor, and I submitted it, and then I went back like 2 hours later, and I could see like 5 things where the AI had just taken liberties. It like had changed a few things I didn't want changed. It added some information that was totally random, but I didn't even see it. And that's the part that I think gets really tricky when you're using AI, is that it's so good. You're like, this is so good. Another thing we see a lot of people doing is they're just using it to write, and they're like, oh yeah, AI, write me all my emails. People know, like, the voice of it isn't good enough yet that people don't know. So I can tell when someone's writing me an email that it's generated by AI, or I think I can tell. So you also want to make sure you're using your own voice. This one is kind of funny. This image, I asked it to show me what the like future plans are for animal shelters. Like, what is the most forward thinking plans for animal shelters? I have no idea where it pulled this hellscape from, but it's hopefully not the future of animal shelters. I don't know what that is, but that is not uncommon for it to like, it may have gotten that from sci-fi. We don't know where that image came from, but that looks like a pretty terrible future. So that's probably not actually happening, but AI in its world, because it's not actually thinking, may use that. So I'm going to stop there for 1 second. I'm going to get rid of this, and I'm going to go right to, we're going to go right to ChatGPT. Okay. So here we are. Stephanie, do we have any questions that I should be answering before I jump into actually being in ChatGPT?
Yeah, we do have one from Kathy. It says, are you familiar with Microsoft Copilot? It claims to have more security and privacy, but I've not yet used it.
I haven't. I haven't used it yet. I'm going to, and I think we're going to start to see platforms come online that claim to have more or less privacy. So it'll be interesting if anybody is using that. I'd love to know your feedback on if it's working for you, but I haven't used that one. Okay, so remember the data that I told you about, that the de-identified data? So I just want to give you a quick example of, and while I'm doing this, Stephanie, maybe think, what I'd like to ask everybody, is there something you'd like me to help you with AI? Like, is there a work product that you need that I could do? So Dr. Levy was on the first version of this, and she asked me to create a script for animal control officers to talk to the public about TNR and community cats. So that was a good example. So if you have any questions or anything you're trying to create, let me know, and we'll use it as an example in just a moment. But for this one, I entered my data, and so you see up here, I'm in ChatGPT 4, and up here you can see, oh, there's ChatGPT, here's ChatGPT 4, and then these are all my chats. So I have a lot of chats saved. I've been trying to delete them out more, but let's go to back up here. Okay. So for this one, I gave it the data and I said, please help me analyze this. So it did analyze it just from a screenshot. So I didn't have to have any fancy documents. And it told me the key trends from 2019 to 2022. And it gave me these key trends. So now I'm gonna just start because I have too much stuff in this chat. So let me take this and I'm gonna copy it. And let's say I want to look at these trends and I'm going to do a new chat. So I'm going to start a new chat and I'm going to say, please be an operations management expert. Help me make a plan for improvement based on the following trends in my animal shelter. Let's just see what it does with that. And you can see it's very, very, very fast. And so what is it going to tell us? It's telling us, so based on the data, it's saying that they have several key areas: intake management, outcomes optimization, community engagement, and operational efficiency. So they're saying practice intake management, enhance community programs, increase education in the community. It's telling us what metrics we should be monitoring for that. And then it's saying optimize outcomes. And by the way, I'm just seeing this for the first time too, so this is live for me as well. But it's saying increase adoptions, foster programs, rescue partnerships, metrics to monitor, foster participation and success rates, number of animals transferred to rescue. So pretty basic. It's talking about community engagement, and then operational efficiency, data-driven decision-making, perform regular data analysis, implement a system for regular analysis of intake and outcome data to identify trends and adjust strategies accordingly. Talks about staff training and support, metrics to monitor, efficiency of intake and outcome processes. I'm going to ask it more about that. Staff performance and satisfaction. So let's say, how would you recommend I monitor the metric efficiency of intake and outcome processes? Just curious. Because that one is interesting. I'm just not sure exactly what it means. So it says to us, implement a shelter management software. We already have one. Regular reporting, generate weekly, monthly, and quarterly reports to review the data, include key performance indicators such as average length of stay, time to adoption, and return to owner rates. It's going to go into some detail about these: average length of stay, intake to outcome time, outcome ratios, process mapping, and bottleneck analysis. Bottleneck analysis sounds interesting. Identify common bottlenecks or delays in the process. Implement solutions such as additional staffing, streamlined procedures, or automated systems to address those bottlenecks. That's so cool. It's telling me a whole lot more stuff, but I'm going to stop on the bottlenecks because I'm really interested in that. Can you create a 30-day, no, let's say 60-day. Let's give ourselves 60 days. 60-day plan to remove, what does it say? Evaluate, assess and remove bottlenecks in my system. And I'm going to say system based on the data I shared. So this is what I mean. This is what chain of thought is. So we're kind of going through and we're just iterating with it. And we're getting down to what we need. And oftentimes I find that what I get to isn't what I knew I needed. And you can just see it working here. It's just going to continue to give us a lot of information. So this is giving us a week-by-week plan. And it's literally laying out a plan for us, which is great. And talking about, let's see, trying to keep up with it. So here's where I want to just see if it's going back to the data. So gather detailed data, identify and assemble a team of key stakeholders, including staff from intake, adoption, medical, and volunteer departments. Set a clear objective, reducing average length of stay or increasing adoption rates. And then it goes on and on and on. This plan is a little bit generic for what I need, but in order to get to a better plan, I would have to give it more information. So what I would probably do next, if you all weren't sitting here watching, is I probably would give it that 6 months of data, and I probably would give it things like the length of stay so that it knew, and I would say, okay, help me generate a checklist plan with timelines for this based on this information. So I would keep feeding it information in order to get to the answer I needed. But in another 15 minutes, I would have a clean plan to hand my team and say, here's what we're going to do. We're going to try this over 60 days. Here's our objective. I would have it help me set an objective. In fact, let's do that right now. Based on the data I provided, can you offer me a few possible objectives and KPIs for this? Because I'm curious like what it would say. And remember, it's amassing information that exists all over. It is not making this stuff up. It's taking information from those trillions of records, both within and without outside of animal welfare. That's why I told it just to be an operations expert, not an animal welfare operations expert. I wanted to get data from outside, but it says, okay, KPIs, average number of days animals spend in the shelter from intake to outcome, reducing the average length of stay by 20% over the next 60 days. And then this is cool, it says define average length of stay for specific categories such as strays, owner surrenders, and fostered. Target, achieve a 25% reduction in length of stay for stray and a 30% reduction for owner surrendered. So it's giving me some ideas about how to look at the data, which I probably wouldn't have thought actually. And Stephanie, I think this is so interesting because we may not use all of this, but it's really generative because I'm like, yeah, when we look at length of stay, we should always be specifying based on intake type. Do you have thoughts about that?
Yeah, I think that's something that we're digging into right now when we're looking at length of stay and as another way to slice the data. We also have a couple questions in the chat too, if you want me to read them off to you. Joel, with your question on what questions do we want to answer, Jill said, I'd like an up-to-date post about the benefits of doing free adoptions with links to research.
Oh, that's such a good one. I love that. Okay, let me start a new chat.
We also had, while you're doing that, Taryn asked, have you had any issues with math when it's analyzing data?
No, I've had no issues with math. I've had issues where animal shelter data sets are so messy and they use such random categories and they're all different that if I don't define the categories and make sure that things are in the right boxes, that's when I have problems. The math has been really awesome. And if I have a clean data set, I've had no issues, but it's oftentimes there's some like, you know, on animal shelter data, like at the very bottom, there'll be just like a random box with the number in it that can throw your whole thing off. So you really want to look at your data. What I've been doing lately is taking it out of like PopPoint or Chameleon or wherever it's taking it out and putting it into my own spreadsheet so that I'm kind of cleaning it up first and then putting the spreadsheet in. When I'm taking data straight out of the software system, I'm having some challenges. And what I'm hoping is the software systems are going to start to integrate more fully with AI so that it's a little bit more seamless process. Right now, it's a little clunky still. Clunky based on my level of knowledge. Okay, we have 41 minutes. So Stephanie, can you read me that first question one more time?
Yep. I'd like an update post about the benefits of doing free adoptions with links to research.
Providing, I'm going to say fee waived adoptions or free adoptions. That last part?
With links to research.
Oh, okay. Okay, this is a good example of where if you don't use chain of thought, you're going to get yourself into trouble. So I'm just going to start with the first part of that first and see what it gives us. I also want you to keep in mind that it knows me now. So there's a couple of settings you can use. And I'm going to show you those in 1 second. But because it knows me now, it's probably going to be more likely to give me the answers that I want to hear. And as it gets to know you, you can work either anonymously, so it starts over and it doesn't know you, or you can like let it get to know your information. So I've chosen to let it get to know my information. And wow, it's giving us a very long, very long blog here. That's probably no one's going to read, but okay. Benefits of fee-waived and free adoptions, creating a lifeline for animals and communities. So this is great. Economic benefit for adopters. It's a little weird. Probably going to delete that one, but we can do that later. Improve shelter environment. When shelters reduce their population through fee-waived adoptions, the overall environment within the shelter improves, strengthening the human-animal bond, dispelling myths. There's a common misperception that fee-waived adoptions devalue animals or attract less committed adopters. However, studies and real-world experiences from numerous shelters have debunked this myth. The commitment to providing a living home is not determined by the adoption fee. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually just going to take number 6 and I'm going to put number 6 in and I'm going to say, please provide citations for references that support. I'm just going to say number 6. Let's see what it can do. If and I'm testing it a little bit here too. Let's see if it can get that I'm asking it to go to the dispelling myths, or if I'm going to have to put the text in. So you can see that right now it's doing a web search, and that is what it does. It's similarly doing a web search. So it's rewriting the piece. I'm not sure why we did not ask it to do that, but we'll see what it comes up with at the end. And this is what people get frustrated with, because they're like, well, that's not what I asked. It doesn't work. It doesn't work. It does work. It's just, I haven't maybe prompted it correctly yet, but let's see. So, okay, it's putting in references. So it rewrote it, but now it's putting in 2 references. So I'm going to say, okay, thanks. Let's say, please just list the references out without references out for the arguments in favor of free adoptions. You don't need to rewrite the whole blog. Let's see if it can do that. Okay. Here we go. So what is it doing now? Okay, now it is pointing us to where it is getting this information. And it's providing some different references. So I'm going to say, okay, provide references for why to dispel the myth that free adoptions are bad, let's say. And so I'm just going to keep going, and I start to pull on threads like, here we go, we got some real references. So it took me a minute, and it's like, I had to kind of get to a question that it understood. I confused it a little bit, I think, because it's a big thing to ask it. If you weren't here, I may have had it write an outline first, and then we would have written each section together, but here they're giving us a lot. So this is a lot of references, and I want to hear from the person who asked this if you find this helpful. So Maddie's Fun study, 93% of dogs, 95% of cats during fee-waived event were still with their adopters a year later. ASPCA study says that free adoptions did not lead to a decreased perception of the pet's value. Then there's information from Edmonton Humane Society about fee-waived and non-fee-waived, and found no difference in post-adoption care, no increase in return rates. So this is, I find this pretty helpful, and I know most of these references, and I know that these are all real citations. So what do you all think about? What do you think about that?
While people are answering, we have another question. Has the issue come up regarding ethical or legal issues with ACO using AI to generate court documents or summarize and track their casework?
That is not my area of expertise, though I do work with a number of social workers who are dealing with this. And I would say that That information is very specific to state and local laws, and your own government policies and regulations. And it is totally up in the air right now. Everybody's kind of freaking out about it. And so different places and different industries all have different rules and laws. I think it's something that everyone is trying to hire AI experts. And the problem is that there are very few real AI experts. Like, there are people that use AI, but there's no manual for this. You can't like go buy a manual to learn how to use AI. It's evolving too rapidly. Similarly, the laws and regulations that govern pretty much everything are changing, but not fast enough. So it's a great question, and it's good to check in specifically with your area and what is happening. And like in Austin, I joined the Austin AI Alliance because I really wanted to understand what was happening minute to minute, especially somewhere like Austin, because immediately local government is incorporating artificial intelligence, and knowing what they're doing and what the rules are is really important. Okay, so do you have any experience processing data from PetPoint? Okay, let's get back to data. So gosh, we only have 12 minutes. I'm gonna go fast. Yes, so if we may do a part 2 of this. It's just about data, because there's so much to say about how it works with data. I would say that the big lesson for me, and I've used it with PetPoint, Chameleon, and ShelterLive data, and the big lesson for me has been that if I can feed it seemingly random data, especially animal level data, like if I can give it animal level data, it's showing me trends that I may not have seen myself. Like, it can show you that your length of stay for 8-year-old animals has increased by 40 days, and your length of stay for 7-year-old animals has decreased by 20 days. Why? It can often help you figure out why too. So it's able to give you a more nuanced view. And I would say that the more data you give it, the more animal level data you give it, the better. But even with the more macro data, like even looking at just like intakes and outcomes over a 10-year period, it will see trends that I don't, because it's like putting the data together in ways that I think we just have trained our brains not to. So one of the things I'm trying to do now is take animal control data and put it together with shelter data and figure out, can AI help us understand what the relationship between the animal control policies and practices are and the data. The other thing that you can do is and I actually wanted to do this recently. I want to ask it, I'm going to start a new chat and just ask it, can you give me a list of, can you tell me the average number of open hours of animal shelters in Texas? I have no idea what it's going to give me for this. We'll see. Okay, so it's going to give me a lot of hours of different shelters. This saves so much time, because Stephanie and I have been talking a lot, because there's like shelters that are open 7 days a week, 9 hours a day, and then there's shelters that are open 2 days a week, 2 hours a day. And we're trying to figure out, like, how is that impacting the data? It's really an interesting question. So it's going to give me this. It's going to show me how it did its math. And it's saying that the average weekly hours based on some examples is 46.2. So I could then go and ask it, like, okay, so how does that compare to my state in California? Actually, let's ask it. Okay. What did I ask it? I'm going to ask a very similar question. Can you tell me the average number of open hours in shelters in Texas? Tell me the average number of open hours in shelters, in animal shelters in California. So I'm going to ask it the same question and see what I get. And what we'll see is the average number of open hours in shelters in Texas different or similar to the average number of open hours in California? Based on the information it is telling us, the average weekly hours in a shelter in California are 46.4, and in Texas are 46.2. Now, that may be generally correct. Most of this information is probably true, but we would want to check it because some of this may be outdated. But that is not what I expected to find. I thought shelters in California would actually be open less, because I've seen more shelters in California that are open fewer hours. So that's really interesting. And you can ask questions like that that you may not have thought of when you're just looking at your intake and outcome data. So be really helpful for that as well. Let's see, we had another question I wanted to make sure I answered. Is there anything else, Stephanie, that I've missed? I'm not sure.
Nope, you covered all the questions. Jill replied to the fee-waived adoption section or part and said she loved the section created with the links to research.
Okay, so in these last few minutes, I want to give everybody a tool that I really, this is everything I know. And this is also on my website. My website is Outcomes for Pets, but I'm gonna stop sharing now. And I'm gonna give you this in the chat and we'll send it to you afterwards. But this resource I created and I just updated it. It will be out of date probably in a month again, but I'm gonna try to keep it updated. And what this is it is a quick start, everything you need to know, everything that was in this presentation guide to using artificial intelligence. So if you are like, okay, I'm ready to get started, but what am I going to do? Because that was a lot of information. It is all right here for you. There's nothing here. And I'll put the link to the slides as well in this. But this is everything. And one thing that you may find helpful is I gave you a lot of sample prompts. So there's a lot of prompts in here that you can use to ask it different things. And I tried to pick some topics that I know people really need. So writing letters to donors, streamlining your processes, encouraging critical thinking on your team, reducing meeting redundancies. So I gave you a lot of ideas. And then at the very end, the most important part of all of this is a resource list that has been my learning. And this is just a whole list of things that you can read, watch if you're a podcast person or you're a YouTube person, but starting to engage just with like what is happening is really helpful. And the single most important thing I ever listened to is under learning resources. How should I be using AI right now? It's an interview between Ezra Klein and Ethan Malik. And I kind of got it after that. It's worth spending that hour. The link is right there. And that hour, like I was like, okay, I get it. This is why we need this for work. And he does a really good job getting rid of kind of the like doomsday fear piece. They kind of knock that out of the way. They're like, yep, it's pretty terrifying. We don't know a lot about it. There's a lot to learn, but we all have to learn to use it. So I thought it was really helpful. That one, if you're going to do one thing, I would recommend that. But again, you are as much of an expert as I am. You're maybe a couple months behind me because there's going to be some of us that are just interested in it and that will help kind of lead others. But we need more of me. And so if you want help and I can help you in any way, if we at Shelter Animals Count can help you in any way, we are in for it. And if there's other webinars or writings you would like to see on artificial intelligence, if there's other things you'd like us to create, or you're like, I need a training on this, let us know. Stephanie, what's the best way for people to contact Shelter Animals Count?
I'll put it in the chat, but it's info@shelteranimalscount.org.
Yeah, and I'm Kristen. I'm Kristen at Outcomes for Pets. You can find me. I write about this stuff on LinkedIn all the time, so please find me there. We are going to share the recording of this, so you'll be able to share it. And we're going to keep talking about this as it evolves. If any of you are experts in your own right, please reach out to me because I'd love to do more collaborative stuff and know especially if your shelter is using AI. We really, really want to hear about it. We're going to be asking you more about that too, but we really appreciate you coming. And this was sort of a webinar that we decided to do, despite the fact it's a very busy time of year. Some folks are going to be at Best Friends later this week, but this is really important too. And so we'll be here to keep talking about it. And we'll be here also to keep talking about how you can think differently about your data by using artificial intelligence. So thanks so much. I think we're about done. I'll give you a couple of minutes of your time back and please reach out if you have any questions.